Greetings, Michael.
Hello, Carl. Where are you? This is
I know.
your
This is my
virtual
background.
backdrop looks very different this week.
Yeah, this is my virtual backdrop. Now, actually, I snuck outside because the internet connection is better outside. And when it's nice in the UK, you go outside. You know what I mean? So I'm close to the house. I'm not breaking any rules, but I am outside.
So it's this weird thing where it's like it's a real backdrop of nature. Like
That's right. I'll give you, just for the sake of everybody, I'll give you just a peek of the beautiful
beautiful green countryside.
Yeah. And this sort of points to, I've been being very intentional about spending all within the rules of wherever you are. I've been very intentional about spending time outside lately. And as much as I can, even, sort of sunshine, like in the light outside, as much as I can within the rules. And there's a reason for that. And the reason for that for me is that has a huge impact on how I feel. And that's cool. Like, I want to feel good. That's cool. But the most important part of how I feel, at least for me professionally, is an impact on my confidence levels. And that's sort of what I'd like to talk about right now. Like, this idea of confidence, I'd like to talk with you about this idea of, I know we've hinted at imposter syndrome before. We've talked about rational overconfidence as a tool with clients, but I'm talking about a little different strain. I'm talking about confidence as a business owner, confidence as an entrepreneur, and even if you're not a business owner or entrepreneur, just your personal confidence and the impact it has on your ability to get work done. How does that sound for a topic?
I like the topic. I become increasingly fascinated by just the role that confidence plays in what we do as advisors and as building our businesses, our practices, our careers. On the one hand, one of the most common challenges I see for advisors as they're getting started is that we all drastically underprice our services and our value. Because what I find basically universally comes down to a confidence issue. We actually documented this with an internal benchmarking study we did for XY Planning Network that found literally 100.0% of firms raised their financial planning fees in the first 3 years. And it's not as though it was just a lot of new advisors that said like, oh, well, now I have 3 years of experience, so I'm going to raise my fees. Like, the average person joins XY Planning Network with 7 to 10 years of experience. And even at that level of experience, still typically is not raising their fees until after they're several years in, which to me is not a, hey, I'm a little more experienced now, I'm going to raise my fee. That's a, I'm more confident now that like this is going to work, I'm raising my fees. Like this phenomenon, when we get started, we discount ourselves down because we're just so concerned. Am I going to get any clients? Is anybody going to pay me anything? Are they going to show up? Are they going to stick around? That we discount ourselves. And when the confidence shows up, we at least right size our fees to our actual value.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And there's so many ways we could go. Like, and I know we've talked about pricing, and I want to kind of try and I think that's a perfect way to sort of springboard into this idea of okay, so how do you think about personal confidence? Because and how do we protect it? Right? Like, and we could spend a whole lot of time talking about how to build it. Let's leave that aside just a little bit. Let's just think about, like, when I'm feeling confident, I act like this. So what are some things you find yourself doing? There's two ways to think about this question. I'll give you both and then let you talk about it. What are some things you find when you're feeling confident, I do this? Like, that's one. And the other is, when I'm not feeling confident, I notice myself engaging in these ways to hide. Right? So how would you talk about that?
So for me, ultimately, like everything I think ends out stemming from confidence at the end of the day, like particularly in a position as a business owner. Like when I feel confident, I price my value what I'm worth. I don't discount myself. When I feel confident, I go get more new business opportunities. When I feel confident, I don't fret if a client lets go. I say they probably weren't a good fit anyways. If they fire me in this environment, clearly they don't value financial planning advice. I'm so glad they freed up a slot on my limited capacity bus so I can go get a better client who's a better fit, who's going to work with me in the long run the way that other client didn't. Right? To me, when the confidence is there, even things that are quote unquote setbacks just become opportunities to the next stage. I still remember like the first time I lost a key employee in a business, and was sort of understandably very anxious, like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? Like, this is going to tumble back the business. All this work's blowing back to me. I got all this stuff to deal with now. I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to replace this person, right? Like, lost my confidence. So all the negative thoughts start building up of how the problems are going to be. And my coach at the time said, all right, let's break this cycle for a moment. I want you to take a minute and give me one example of how this person leaving could turn out to be the best thing that ever happened to your business. Like if you look back 5 years from now and say, hey, that was a turning point, what would have to happen for this to turn out to be the best thing that ever happened for your business, that you lost that key employee? And frankly, when I look back now over the past 5 years, that was a turning point in the growth of the business thereafter. And not that the person I lost wasn't a fantastic team member and someone I still very much miss not having on the team, but forcing me to recognize I need to build the business in a way that I'm not so dependent on that person and their role in the first place has ultimately allowed me to build an even more successful, more robust, better growing, more impactful business than I had before. Because for me, just at the end of the day, that question, that like incredibly sneaky question she snuck in on me, like forced me to stop approaching the question from a not confident end. Oh my gosh, I lost a key employee. What am I going to do? Negative spiral down. And into no, you have a demonstrated track record as a successful business owner. So how are you going to make this the best thing that could have ever happened to your business? And lo and behold, then I did. Like once I set a vision for that and I had confidence for that, what made that happen? Because I think once you have your confidence, you just go and make it happen.
Yeah. I think there's some really, really important things we need to touch on, and we could spend a whole episode on this idea. It's so interesting. That was the same experience. You didn't change the experience. Like the
thing happened. It was out of my control.
The fact pattern, and some people call that circumstances, right? The circumstances didn't change. It was the thinking around the circumstances that changed. And then the feeling around the thinking. We live in the feeling of our thinking, right? So it was the feeling and then the story. And what I'm super curious as it relates back to confidence is like when we feel, and I think this is so important for, like, I have to remind myself all the time, when I feel confident, I do stuff, right? How to do stuff. Like anytime I'm trying to figure out how, and this is really complex, I'm going to go search the internet, I'm going to buy 17 books. Some of that's confident work, but mostly it's places to hide because I'm feeling unconfident. And I think Dan Sullivan at the Strategic Coach has a really insightful way of looking at this. I think I feel most confident when I'm doing stuff that's, he calls it your unique ability, right? The stuff that I'm uniquely good at. And now sorting out what that is, that takes a little bit of work, but I think you'll notice it. I like to notice things that give me energy, right? Things that give me energy. I leave from it confident. And I think most advisors will find this true. Most planners will find this true. It's not always true, but I think a lot of planners will relate to this. Like you kind of go to work, you spend a couple times, like, you get distracted by email. is there a new time management book? I'll go research that. You do all that stuff. And then in the old days when we were meeting people for lunch, you might go to lunch with a prospective client,
Yep.
right? And you have an hour and 15-minute lunch and you leave just fired up, right? You maybe even you met for, even though I don't drink coffee, you met for coffee at 3, right? The whole day you spent like doing stuff, and then you don't even remember what you did. And then you go home, and your spouse is like, "How was the day?" And you're like, "It was amazing." And you're like, "Well, what was amazing about it?" Well, you know what? I I went to lunch because like I was in that, you know what I mean? I was in that unique space where like for me that gives me energy. It may be for you like detailed analysis and planning, but whatever it is, I'm not saying you. I'm just saying the listener.
Or
Whatever
me,
it
that's
is,
okay. I'm
oh
good
yeah,
at detailed
or
analysis.
you using the abacus and all that stuff. So for whatever it is, you'll notice like it gives you energy. So the question is, how much time can we spend doing those things?
Yep.
Because when we engage in other activities, we're typically hiding,
Yep.
right? And it may be that like marketing's super important, like creating content for your content marketing plan. I'm making something up. Let's say that's super important. And when you're feeling confident, well, I can guarantee you, when you're feeling confident, it's much easier to do. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm just saying it's much easier. So let's ask the second part of that question though. What do you find? So I want to get to like some concrete ideas around protecting confidence. So what do you find yourself doing that erodes confidence?
That erodes confidence.
Yeah. What are and maybe not even what to do. What are the circumstances in your life that you find yourself like, oh man, I'm really not feeling that confident?
I think by and large, for me at least, is it's business setbacks. It's a bad client meeting. It's a bad
Well, okay,
meeting.
wait. I gotta stop you. So the bad client meetings, a circumstance that happened. Why are you viewing it as bad? What was going on in your life to allow you to say it was bad? That the key employee leaving.
Mhm.
What was going on that you decided for some reason that was going to be viewed as bad until somebody else pointed it out?
Um, so I think there's one of I don't know one of two things that comes from it. Either I think there's a confidence piece that sometimes gets thrown when you know I'll just call it like bad stuff is happening that feels out of your control,
Hmm.
or like I'm not sure how this is going to work because setbacks keep happening and I can't even stop them because it feels like they're out of my control. And I think even to me, like that's even part of the challenge around hard client meetings. Like,
Hmm.
it doesn't feel good to show up and just have a client that feels the need to vent at you for a while because bad stuff's happening in markets and
Yeah,
they
yeah, yeah.
and they need a place to vent. And I'm like, I got to step in and be a punching bag sometimes. And valuable for them. They need to vent. I can give some words of help. They may feel better by the end, but like I got to go into one meeting after another where clients may be upset and I didn't get to control that. Like I didn't get to bring those circumstances in. I just get to walk into a meeting where all I know is they're probably unhappy about the markets and I'm on defense just to make sure that I don't lose them as a client. And
Wait,
I,
because I gotta point this out. So you have been through meetings like that,
mhm.
and you've had the exact same meeting where you've been like, "Hey, this is my job today. This is awesome." They like, I just lost a client, made room for another one. Like, what's the difference between those two? What's the difference between the exact same set of circumstance in one day eroding confidence, smashing you, feeling like you're going to barely make it home, and the other day you just rolling with it? What's the difference? How do we protect that? What's the difference?
It's a good question. Like I think the difference literally is the confidence. It's going the
Right.
meeting and either saying, I'm going to do my best to help this client. If it doesn't work out, I guess they don't value my services and I'll find another one. Or,
Okay. So
or like, if I can't help them, they're going to fire me. And if they fire me, my revenue goes down. If my revenue goes down, then my income goes down. And then my family's
it's
stressed,
the
my
end of the
employees are
world.
stressed, and down
Yeah,
the
you're
hill.
going to end up we're going to end up under a bridge. So yeah. Okay. So yeah, let's narrow it down. The difference is confidence. What are the things that we need to be doing in our lives? Right. Like I think that confidence is largely a function of, and I was just thinking as you were describing those meetings, punching bag, like the words, right? I was thinking about when I've noticed that when I have air in the shocks, right? When I have air in the shocks, yeah, I'm totally confident.
Mhm.
When I don't have air in the shocks, the smallest bump throws me under the bridge, right? Like your pattern you just did. So, and I think air in the shocks is a function. And I also like to think of it as like basement thinking. Like when my energy is in the basement,
Yeah.
the smallest little thing will set me off, right? I'm defensive. I like my child can say something and suddenly boom, things go off the rails. I'm looking for a fight, like all of those things. And so those are all warning signs on a dashboard that's saying,
Right.
hey, you're not feeling confident right now. Maybe you shouldn't return that email, or you shouldn't pick up that phone or whatever, like, and you shouldn't engage in this thing. And my wife actually knows when I'm feeling this way, because she just has this look she gives me. And for a long time it made me super mad. But now we've developed an ability. She just has this look, and essentially what it says in her eyes is, I'm not buying anything you're selling today. Right? Like, you're looking for a fight and I'm not fighting. Like, I'm not buying anything. So when those signs are flashing, so if you feel that way, it's a sign you don't have air in the shocks. You're in the basement, right? Which points to me to resilience and like just some of these habits, like, which is kind of back to why I'm outside, right? Like, I noticed I was really tired this morning when I woke up. I was like, okay, you know what? I need to kind of clear the decks of any really important stuff that might get crazy, except for my conversation with Michael, because it always gets crazy. And I need to find a way to spend a little bit more time outside. I need to drink a little bit more water. And I think one of the main ones that it gets back to is sleep, right?
Yep.
So what are those things for you that you notice? Maybe they're like the almost maybe the fuel gauge, or the, if I do these things, I tend to be like, what are some practical tips around? It's funny because we don't want to talk about sleep because we think it'll make you a better human, although we do. But mainly, it's going to make you better at your job. Now, I appointed myself vice president of unspeakable things a little while ago, which allows me to have a conversation on the nerds, like with the nerd, in the context of financial planning, about sleep or being outside. Why? Because it relates to confidence. Why? Because when you're confident, you do your job. What do you think about that, Michael Kitces?
I'll grant it to you as a speakable thing.
Thank you. Thank you.
For me, I found, so there are a couple of things overall. In terms of kind of like what I guess either gives confidence or brings confidence, or protects resiliency. One, like I'll often go right to where you are, of being outside. I have found, I think just overall as the years have gone by, I don't know, maybe this is a thing of just my own biological clock ticking. Like, I feel more of a pull to go outside now to get fresh air and clear my head than I did in my 20s or even in my 30s. And so, as a starting point, just like anytime I've got a phone call or a conference call that I don't specifically need to be in front of the computer because I'm screen sharing or referencing a document, or videoing, like it's a call. I throw on a headset and I walk around outside. Like, I just walk in my neighborhood because we're working from home right now, and just have the conversation walking around outside and getting fresh air. And I find it, like, it really does very much clear my head. You can buy some like great Plantronics noise canceling headsets right now, so you walk around outside and do your thing and not have everyone distracted by the fact that you're walking around outside. They won't even know. But just like literally getting fresh air. And at the end of the day, is even just a comfortable walk outside, like a 30-minute conference call, you're going to put in more than a mile walking around outside, which is frankly just kind of good for overall health and exercise. It's not running and cardio fitness, but it's a material amount of exercise. I'll have long calls or meetings, and look down. It's like, oh my gosh, like I did like 3, 4, 5 miles of walking
Yeah.
over an extended call or
Yeah.
conversation. I call them walk and talks. Like I just tell my wife or kids, like, Daddy's got to go outside. I got to do a walk and talk. Throw on the
Yeah.
headset,
So good.
do a conversation, right? So it's even to me like it's productive time because I'm sort of obsessed with productivity and cramming in productive time when I can. So like I get to double duty my productive time and my healthy outdoors fresh air resilience time.
Yeah, so good. So, and I want just to remember, because we've done an episode around some of these hints, like walking desks and drink some water and improve your snacks, and that's really important. Here, we're directly linking it back to the idea of having air in the shocks so that you can have confidence. And so, one other thing before we wrap up that I just want to point to, let's just think of some activities that generate confidence and some activities that drain confidence. So, have you ever noticed, like, I'm sure you have, but think back to like, what's the thing that when you do it, you're like, yeah, that was amazing? Like, what's one of those things that comes to mind? Like, oh, that was great. I was operating in the zone. Like, if you were to use that word.
Yeah. Oh, I was going to say, like, what are the things in general that sort of give confidence and feel good to me in that direction? Like it's when I'm doing things that are in the zone, right? All these different labels, like Dan Sullivan calls your unique ability. Gallup calls it your strengths for Strengths Finder. I kind of like the framing because at least just it resonates with me. Like there's certain things that you do throughout your day that you enjoy and energize you and are quote energy giving.
Yep.
And then there are other things that you don't enjoy so much in your day that feel energy taking.
Give
And
me an
so
example for you.
examples for me, well, one really is like just getting down to sit down and nerd out on something.
Really,
I
really, like like alone, digging into something.
Yeah, like just a alone time, like me and this tax law are going toe to toe, and like just
chewing into it, just like
yeah,
yeah, tax
like
law.
that. I like doing that stuff. It's why I ended out writing
It's
giant blog
amazing.
posts. Like, right, you can't do that because it's a job. You have to do that because it's a
I
passion.
know,
Uh,
and that's
or-
I'm relatively thing agnostic. I just
yeah,
love that people have a thing,
yeah,
right? Like, and I could care less about giant tax law, but it's super excited to see you get fired up, and it's super excited for the world that you do, right? So that's an example. Tax law, you're like, yeah, or just some nerd out
yeah.
thing.
Getting into what for me is creative space, which is usually sort of strategic thinking, creative space. Ultimately, that's where, again, indirectly, a lot of the articles that I do come from. But it's just like I'm just going to sit down with my whiteboard for half an hour, and just start sketching out. Like, here's some stuff I've been thinking about. Here's some trends I think are evolving. Let me just kind of put this down and visualize a little. Like, what's going on here? Where do I think this goes? And for me, that's where some of the kind of flashes of insight come from. Of like, okay, I think I figured out a new thing that could become a thing in the industry. Like most of the businesses that I've created came from some whiteboard sessions. So just getting a little time. Granted, my handwriting is horrific and my drawing is worse. So this whiteboard behind me has a Sharpie. I don't share it the way that you do.
Yeah.
It doesn't
It
look
better not
nearly
have a
as good.
Sharpie. It better have a whiteboard marker.
Oh yeah, I see. It's a whiteboard version.
Okay, because
Uh,
I've done that. I've done that thing.
yes, don't actually Sharpie your whiteboard or it's going to be
Yeah,
but
yeah.
like getting some of that creative space. And I mean, for me, the flip side is like what's energy taking, what's draining for me. Like it's paperworky things. Like it's
Yeah, yeah,
administrative tasks. I did that at one
yeah,
stage of my career. I carried that burden for a long time as a business owner because I had to. But
yeah.
as I've been able to grow the business and hire, like those are some of the things that have come off my plate. And and finding team members who revel in like their ideal day is
Yeah.
to wake up in the morning with a list of 10 tasks to do and check them off because that's
Let's
their
let's let's
thing.
pause. Let's
It's
pause
not
right
mine.
there because that's so important to understand. I didn't know. Like for me, it's conversations and big sort of like gnarly brainstorming stuff where I'm like trying to root out like I may dig into the certainly not the tax law, but I may dig into a concept like mainly around human behavior, and then I love getting deep into it, like nuance, edge case, talking to people about it, and then spitting out the other side with something simple on the other side, right? Like that great quote that simplicity is complexity resolved. like that, like so fired up. I didn't know, and this is really important for people to know, really important. I didn't know that there are some people who don't like that. I didn't know that like a brainstorming session. Right now. I have a my COO is off the charts good. And one day I was telling her something, and I noticed she was like, I could see her physically draining. And I was like, hey, wait. I'm just including you in this conversation around what we could go this way, or this way. And she goes, you know what? I don't enjoy it at all because all I'm thinking about is how do I do it? What's the implementation strategy? What's the thing? She's like, you know, it'd be even better. I was like, wait, you don't want to be included in this like strategic thinking mission? Everybody is like, no, you know, it'd be cool. Go do that with some of your friends and come back and tell me what you want built because I know how to build it. And I was like, wait, really? Like, I didn't know. I love walking into a restaurant, and this will all tie back because I think what the reason we're doing this now is I want to give people permission to start noticing those things for themselves. And there's no right or wrong. There's no like the cool kids do it this way and the other kids do it this way. There's no right or wrong. And so I didn't know. I love going into restaurants and literally like if somebody hands me the menu, I'm like, I'm out. Like I just like to turn the menu over and say to the server, bring us your favorite stuff. Make sure there's enough for all 6 of us. Now, I didn't know until just recently, like 2 weeks ago, somebody pointed out like, seriously, my favorite part is the 15 minutes of back and forth thinking. And I was like, wow. So here's the point. Notice those things. Like we have noticed as a team here, we've noticed Carl gets really jazzed when he has conversations. I don't know if we just noticed that now, but Carl gets really jazzed when he has conversations. So we schedule those into the day so that I don't annoy everybody else, right? Like we put that in a container. So if I do that, my whole day goes better and I feel confident. If I go 2 or 3 days without that, everybody knows like, oh geez, watch out. So I think because then what happens is I start hiding and, you know, spending a bunch of time looking at random stuff. And so I think if we can notice that, and again, back to resilience, the best way to notice it is to be, you know, be caught up on the sleep, getting some time outside, have air in the shocks, whatever that is. Like we've talked about that in other episodes and it's easy to find out. Have air in the shocks so that you can pay attention to what gives you energy or not. And the more time you're spending working in that zone, the more confident you will feel. Now, that doesn't mean that there's not temporary planned imbalances out of the zone that we just all got to like my buddy calls it being the corporate janitor. Like sometimes you just got to unplug the toilet. Like you just got to do what you have to do, of course, but at least we can start noticing it. So that's why I think, I mean, that's actually why I'm outside, which is what started this whole thing. And that's why I think confidence is so important, is because the world needs you, my friends. The people listening to this, the world needs you. And so many of you, I want to give you an empathetic hug right now before I punch you in the nose. So many of you are hiding because that's what we do as humans.
Right.
Scary times, we hide. Guess what? We don't hide when we're confident. And that's why we care. Michael and I wanted to talk about confidence.
So I feel like there's sort of 3 groups. There are the people who are generally confident. So we're talking about like, how do you protect the confidence and stay above the line? There are, I don't know, I guess I'll call them like the marginally confident. Sometimes we're in the good zone. Sometimes we're in the bad zone. So I think like we've had a lot of good discussion about, can you become more aware of what's the good zone for you and what's the bad zone for you, so you can try to shape your time to spend more of your time in the good zone stuff that creates confidence and gives energy, and not the bad zone stuff that takes confidence and takes energy. So then, like, as we wrap up, I want to talk about, or I guess get your thoughts for a moment on the third group, right? These are the people who are not feeling so good and so confident right now. Like we're in a not good place. And, you know, unfortunately, sometimes if you get buried enough in a not good place, it's pretty hard to find your way out sometimes.
Yeah.
So my suggestion, at least for someone that's there, like if you're struggling even just to figure out like what are these, you know, natural strengths, unique abilities, energy giving things, because right now everything's feeling pretty tough. So at least like the one tip I would give, you know, because I'm a nerd, so this is how I approach things. So there's a wonderful assessment tool out there from Gallup called StrengthsFinder. Great book that goes with it called, First Know Your Strengths. A lot of people know Gallup is a polling organization, but they've actually done incredible research into employee engagement and how to be productive and effective at work. And one of the big things that they've created is this assessment called StrengthsFinder that just helps people understand what really are your natural strengths. If you do work that captures these things, you're probably going to find it's pretty energy giving. And if you do work that's the opposite, it's probably going to be energy taking. It's a list of, I think, 34 strengths. Everyone's got different strengths. So as you said earlier, it's not like one is better than the other. We're all just different and find energy from different things. So if you feel like you have trouble putting your finger on this, like just go take StrengthsFinder. It's an incredibly robust, well-designed assessment. I think you pay a couple of bucks to take like the full 34 strength version and get the feedback. But if you feel like you need to jumpstart the engine a little to just figure out like, what should I be trying to do more of that actually fits my strengths? I would start there. So I don't know if you have a tip as well as we wrap up of like, what would be your tip for jumpstarting the confidence engine if it's stalled out?
Totally. I love your tip. And I would just add, just for the sake of variety, something completely different, which is I would make sure there's air in the shocks, right? And I would start with sleep. Like if I'm feeling unconfident, and again, I think your tip's pointing to the, well, like I want to know what actually generates. That's awesome. And what I would say, and I was a couple years ago, probably 4.5, 5 years ago, before we moved to New Zealand, I was a broken human from just the unending stress, which I think I just realized we should have a whole nother episode about, just the sort of how you get out of that hole. But I was a broken human. It took 3 or 4 years of real concentrated effort to rebuild that air in the shocks. And now I'm highly guarded about it because I know how fragile it is. So I would start, if I'm feeling unconfident, it means to me, the number one thing it means to me is I'm not getting enough sleep. So I know it's a completely different place to where you went, which is why I think it's valuable for both of these things, is I would just, if I'm feeling unconfident, number one thing, especially if I'm going like weeks, like right now, like just weeks of crushing confidence blows, I would say one thing: get more sleep.
Get more sleep. And if you're not sure what you're doing on sleep,
type sleep in the Google machine.
Get a Fitbit. Fitbit now will even give your sleep a score. So for those of you like me who like to get scored on things with a little competitive edge, like it'll give you a score you can try to improve. Of
course it will.
That's what drives you forward. That's great.
And if you need it, just email Michael. He will explain the algorithm to you that generates the score. He would happily do that on in fact, he'll make it a whole session of weekend reading.
Well, it's really cool. Like it deconstructs the length of sleep, REM cycles. Like it's
I'm sure.
pretty cool. Resting heart rate.
I'm sure. Amen. Super good, Michael. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl.